I try to imagine what it was like for Jesus' disciples 2,000 years ago when Jesus sat down on that mountain and started talking. The vast majority of his disciples were marginalized and they were oppressed. They were the poor in spirit, the mourning, the meek, and those who hungered and thirsted for righteousness. They were nobodies in their society's eyes. And yet, there was Jesus, this famous, powerful, intelligent rabbi, showing and telling them that they were blessed because the kingdom of heaven was reaching out and touching them in and through Jesus' hands, heart, and voice. In his teaching, Jesus was announcing to them the kingdom of heaven, the realm of God's loving reign, where right living, right relationship, and God's love, truth, mercy, and grace abound. Jesus was trying to open up a new way of being for his disciples, where the upside-down values of the kingdom were written on their hearts and minds, so that they could be channels of God's grace and righteousness as the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Simply put, Jesus was teaching them about the kingdom life so that they could participate in it by living in such a way that gave a taste of the kingdom of heaven to those around. In talking about the law and the prophets, Jesus was directing his disciples to the trustworthiness of God, their God who faithfully kept all the promises God made to them. Jesus was pointing to their God who acted on the cries of the enslaved by setting them free. Jesus was pointing to God who saw how they, Jesus' disciples, were imprisoned by the suffering they were experiencing, and God was acting to set them free through and in the person of Jesus. Because Jesus' disciples all those years ago were confined by their experiences and the value system of their society, Jesus had to continually teach them about the kingdom of heaven and living the kingdom life. When they asked Jesus who was the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, he responded by placing a child in their midst. In so doing, Jesus was highlighting that humility was central to the kingdom life. Jesus was dispelling their notion that the kingdom of heaven was hierarchical, like the world around them. He was emphasizing that in the kingdom of heaven, all people are equal. Again, Jesus had to teach his disciples about right relationship in the kingdom because they just weren't getting it. This happened when James and John's mom asked Jesus if her sons could sit in the top 2 seats in his kingdom. And when the other apostles got wind of this, they were very angry. So Jesus had to set things straight. He reminded them that Rome had a pecking order in its empire, and that the Roman leaders treated their underlings with brutality. Jesus was revealing to them that in the kingdom of heaven, there is no violence. Instead, mercy, compassion, and serving others reigns supreme. Jesus also taught through action, selfless service throughout his time on earth, and ultimately in giving his life so that all people may have eternal life in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus also indirectly taught the disciples when he was tested by some Pharisees. They asked Jesus, what's the greatest commandment? Instead of just giving them one, Jesus, in Jesus' style, gave them 2. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Jesus was saying that the law and the prophets hung on loving God and loving neighbor, that they hung on being in right relationship with others. Jesus was pointing out that loving God with one's entire being involves loving others, regardless of who they are or how one feels about them. Throughout the Gospel of Matthew, we also find that the disciples misunderstood what the kingdom life was about and failed to live in it and to live it out. Peter and the other 11 believed that Jesus was the warrior Messiah who would rise up in battle and free the Jewish people from the oppressive Romans. When Jesus pointed out that he wasn't that type of Messiah, that instead of victory through war, he would suffer greatly and be murdered in his love for humanity, Peter rebuked him. Because Peter and company believed that the kingdom that Jesus was talking about was gained through violence, hating your enemy, pride, and primarily serving the interests of oneself and one's group. After their final meal together, Jesus and the disciples spent their last moments together in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus was in great turmoil because he knew the immense suffering that he was about to endure. He requested that they be with him and support him, as he had done so many times for them. And what did the disciples do? Yeah, they fell asleep on him. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. In failing to serve Jesus, the disciples fell short of living into and living out the kingdom life. Then there was Judas. People have speculated as to why he did it. Regardless of the motive, he betrayed Jesus. He stabbed Jesus in the back with a simple kiss. And Judas wasn't the only disciple who turned their back on Jesus. After Jesus was seized and arrested by the crowd in the Garden of Gethsemane, every single one of the remaining 12 fled in fear, deserting Jesus in his time of great need. They served the kingdom of self instead of the kingdom of heaven. I would like to think that if I was one of Jesus' disciples all those years ago, that I would not have fallen asleep. I would have not betrayed Jesus, or I would not have ran away. I would like to think that I would have rejected the kingdoms of this world and the kingdom of self to embrace Jesus, the kingdom of heaven. But the reality is, I fail at times to follow Jesus' instructions to be God's salt of the earth and light of the world to those around me. The hecticness or routineness of everyday life sometimes lulls me to sleep, and I fail to notice the needs of those around me, particularly those who are vulnerable. There have been times when I've betrayed Jesus by worshiping him in church and then walking out the door and spending the rest of the week neglecting to love God through caring for and serving my neighbor. I have also run away from Jesus and the kingdom of heaven by failing to speak up when someone I know makes a racist or discriminatory comment. I am not the only disciple who has failed to be salt and light. I'm not the only disciple who has fallen asleep, betrayed, or abandoned Jesus and the kingdom life. I see it happen every day. It is part of being human in our sinful brokenness. It takes a heavy toll on us, on our lives, on our relationships, and also on the lives of others. It prevents us and others from living into God's desire for us to live with and in God. I also know there are times today when Jesus' disciples say yes to Jesus and the kingdom life. They say yes to serving and loving others. Here at St. Mark's, for example, you provide financial support to Indigenous Christian Fellowship, Canadian Lutheran World Relief, and the Regina Refugee Committee. I know a few St. Mark's parishioners also serve on the Refugee Committee here in Regina. There is also Trinity Lutheran here in Regina. They have a food pantry and lunch program that runs from Monday to Friday. The people they serve are poor. Some of them are unhoused. Some of them are addicted to drugs or alcohol. Some of them do not have adequate clothing for our harsh winters. I know a parishioner who volunteers each week at Trinity's food pantry. She looks forward to going there. She talks about it with excitement, and volunteering there brings her joy. The best part for her is chatting with the people as the food bags are being handed out. She sees the regular visitors of the food pantry as friends. I think volunteering at the food pantry makes her heart sing because she is being God's salt and light in the world. I think she feels so alive when volunteering there because she is living into who God created us to be. People who serve and care for others. People who desire to be in right relationship with others. I also think the following lyrics, written by John Bell, give us a further glimpse into the kingdom life, the discipleship that Jesus is calling you and me to. Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know and never be the same? Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known? Will you let my life be grown in you and you in me? Will you leave you behind if I but call your name? Will you care for cruel and kind and never be the same? Will you risk the hostile stare? Will your life attract or scare? Will you let me answer prayer in you and you in me? Will you help the blinded see if I but call your name? Will you set the prisoners free and never be the same? Will you kiss the leper clean and do such as this unseen, and admit to what I mean in you and you in me? Will you love the you hide if I but call your name? Will you quell the fear inside and never be the same? Will you use the faith you found to reshape the world around through my sight and touch and sound in you and you in me? Amen.
Longing for light, we wait in darkness. Longing for truth, we turn to you. Making our own your holy people, why for the world to see? Christ, be our light, shine in our hearts, shine through darkness. Christ, be our light, shine in your church, gathered today. Longing for peace, our world is troubled. Longing for hope, many despair. Your word alone has power to save us. Make us your living voice. Christ, be our light, shine in our hearts, shine through darkness. Christ, be our light, shine in your church, gathered today. Longing for fruits, many in your church gathered today. Longing for shelter, many are homeless. Longing for warmth, many are cold. Make us your building, shouting for others, walls made of living stones. Christ, be our light, shine in our hearts, shine through the darkness. Christ, be our light, shine in your church, gathered today. Many the gifts, many the people, many the hearts that yearn to belong. Let us be servants to one another.